This is week 3 of Education and Transformation. This is the first section of the lecture presentation. Now, if you recall, we started in the first week, I think, and I presented you with this mirror to emphasise that in this unit there's an emphasis upon reflection, upon how you see yourself and how you understand your experience, how you find the words to explain that. Now, as far as learning goes, one of the major contributors to this field, or in fact probably the person who initially identified this field of transformative learning, Jack Mezirow, described the learning process as moving through 10 stages. Now, this is a learning process as is experienced by an individual, a reflective process, a way of thinking about your own encounter. And Mezirow said that learning starts with a disorienting dilemma. Something happens that leads you to feel a bit confused or a bit concerned or a bit uncertain, or considerably disoriented, considerably confused, considerably concerned. Disorienting dilemma, Mezirow said it starts with. Then he described it as moving through a series of stages. Now, the consequence of feeling disoriented, there's feelings of fear, anger, guilt. Then that experience leads you to sort of think about why you may have been disoriented. And then to understand that in fact that other people have similar sorts of encounters and have also gone through similar experiences. And as a result of understanding that's your own experience in context, that it's not you just alone, you start to look for ways to move beyond this problem. As a result of thinking of ways to move beyond it, you start to plan a course of action, you acquire the skills to follow it through, you start trying it out, you develop confidence and competence in those areas, and then the final stage Mezirow talks about is a reintegration of one's life on the basis of the conditions dictated by one's new perspective. So there's been a disorienting dilemma that's led to a sort of process of reaction, reflection, reconsideration, and re-emergence or re-involvement. So you go back into the process of social relationships and social organisation on the consequence of the new perspective that you've acquired, because your perspective has been transformed by those particular experiences. And that's what Mezirow describes as sort of, in a way, the archetypal process of learning. Now, this doesn't have to be something that you necessarily agree with, but it's an idea for you to think about. So from this sort of information, this sort of presentation, come these key questions. What is perspective transformation? What is transformative learning? Most importantly, what is the relevance of this to me personally and to my thinking about my possible future as an educator? So what is the relevance of this to me, and what does it have to do with my possible work as an educator? And lastly, well, how do I communicate my thinking on this? How do I talk about this experience? And that's where those words like perspective and transformation are so important. We want you to think about your particular learning transitions, how your learning has unfolded, the ways in which it's changed at various times, choices that you have made that affect how you communicate or engage with learning, and significant decisions along the way that have led to different sorts of opportunities for learning and different sorts of ways of engaging with the world. Now, how did you understand these decisions that you took? What did they mean to you? How did your life change as a consequence? And how do these issues, these understandings, these ways of thinking relate to your desire to work as an educator? Now, we could talk about this through a whole series of examples of experiences in life, disruptions. These could be things like relationship breakups. They could be things like suddenly going to a new country, or suddenly reading a whole new series of books that took you into a new way of thinking, or suddenly getting a new idea, or taking up a new hobby. Suddenly you become interested in sailing. And that issue of sailing takes you forward. So this issue is very important in relation to education. And I want to give you a quote from a fellow called Michael Morpurgo, who's a writer for children. He's written a number of quite influential books, all works of fiction. He says, I'll read this out. We must remember that we're preparing children not simply for employment, though this is important, and for the contribution they can make to the common good, which is important also, but for the difficult decisions they will have to make in their personal lives. In those moments when they decide whether or not to have sex with someone new, to be tempted into drugs, bully a schoolmate on the internet, carry a knife or throw a brick through a window. In those moments, the choices they make depend entirely upon the relationships they made when young, with their parents and their teachers, on their self-worth and self-confidence. There is no league table for relationships. So each of these questions involve a perspective. Each of these questions involve a process of transition, a process of change. Each of these processes potentially carry the opportunity for reflection and learning. A teacher who can understand this process in their own lives has a greater opportunity to understand and engage with students about that in their life. When you've thought about your own learning, you can engage in a much more effective way with the learning of other people. And as an educator, your responsibility is not simply to teach students, but to engage with their learning. Their learning is your area of negotiation, your area of conversation, your area of respect and responsibility. And those are very, very important things. This issue of transformation and learning is deeply engaged with your subjective encounters with learning, and it is equally deeply involved with the learning encounters of those students who one day you may be teaching. Okay, we'll just finish that one there for now. Thanks.